think I'm going to go ahead and open the meeting, and then Suzanne and Haley, I'm assuming you'll be able to navigate in with the links that Miranda sent you. So is that all right? Or you can just listen in, which I think will cover, well, allow you to participate. Is that okay with both of you?
That's okay with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good to go. Let's get going.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm Ray Vinke with the Natural Resource Damage Program. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm here in Butte, live near Tech, and I'm our environmental scientist here. Tonight, we're going to be discussing revegetation work on the Butte Hill, which has been done cooperatively by Butte, Silverbow, and Montana Tech for a number of years. It's become more or less a spring tradition or action that the council learns of their work in the prior year, the successes and lessons we learned, and then is briefed on their plans for the coming year and a lot of the opportunity to make recommendations. So I just thought I'd say also in attendance from the Natural Resource Damage Program is Doug Martin, Harley Harris, and Miranda. One thing that everybody should be aware of with all these meetings, this is recorded for your opportunities to listen to in the publics later. So let's see, the Butte, Silverbow, and Montana Tech, they did pre-record their presentations. So they're just, when their element of the program comes up, just be aware that you won't be able to speak to Robert or Abby directly until we have the question and answer period that follows. Suzanne Wall is with Herrera. They've been doing monitoring of revegetation work on Butte Hill, and Suzanne's going to start off our program. As many of you, maybe now know from our introductions, we do have 3 new members, the BNRC. Haley, or Suzanne, Haley, and Courtney. And I guess I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves to other members, our publics, and just go from there. So, Courtney, you agreed to this, so you're going to lead off, please.
I can go first. Okay.
Excellent.
I will try to keep this short. I am been at Montana Tech for a little over 28 years. For the last year and a half, I have been back to regular faculty, but the prior 21 years to that, I was department head of metallurgical and materials engineering. I've been quite involved in doing all kinds of research, from environmental type research, mineral processing, extractive metallurgy, but practically all of it has been about processing. And I've been stunned this past year because I was elected, nominated, and won an award called the Gadan Award. It's a top-level award for the Society of Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration. And I'm still stunned. I can't believe that I actually won that award. And so I'm going to leave it at that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
Oh, I guess I should add that I did my undergraduate degree in '84, graduating from Montana Tech in mineral processing, Virginia Tech in '87, in mining and minerals engineering, and University of Utah for my PhD in metallurgical engineering.
Excellent. Haley or Suzanne, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Oh, I can go first.
Our new BNRC
different Suzanne. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, okay, this is Suzanne Nordwick. It's Nordwick. So some of the emails had my D missing, so And my first name is Suzanne, Suzzann. So I just got appointed to the committee by our new governor. However, I was active with the committee at the very start. I was the co-chair of the Butte Restoration Alliance, which in many ways was a precursor to this committee. I also was a past chairman of the CTEC, the Smith Environmental Technology Committee that works with the tag for the EPA here for Superfund. I guess I got about 30 years of experience in engineering, processing, and environmental stuff. Out of college, my first job was with DuPont. I worked in a materials consultation group, but I was also ended up being the environmental coordinator for my division. So in some respects, all my time I've been working with environmental stuff as well as processing and other stuff. So I guess I think that people that are, I think a lot of people here are hopefully they remember me, but I think I'm well qualified to be here, and I don't know what else if you have any questions, let me know. But I think when we hopefully meet in person, I'll get to meet you guys. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Haley?
Okay. I'm Haley Beaudry, and you have the spelling for it because neither one of them is a common name. But I'm a graduate of Montana Tech a couple of times, and I'm a professional engineer. I've worked in, I don't even know anymore, several countries around the world and the United States, and doing several jobs in the United States. I was actually the project manager building the mine for coal strip 3 and 4 coal supply. And if you've ever been there, that overland conveyor is not by myself, of course, but that's my design. And I was on this board early on when Roscoe was governor, so it probably was near the outset, or maybe even at the outset of using this board, right after the lawsuit was decided. So I was there for a few years and then left. I'm an independent engineer on my own, one-man band, and I have a startup company in North Dakota and another in Montana. And I've also dived into the oil and gas business besides mining and construction. So my wife and I are empty nesters and living in Butte. I'm a little incapacitated right now, and I have been for over a year. I busted up my back, and it's healing, but it's not very fast. So neither am I. Anyway, that's enough information, I guess, for now.
Sounds
Thanks.
good. Excellent, thank you. Miranda, we usually jump in with some directions in terms of logistics. Do you want to provide that? I know I skipped that initially. So in terms of just anyone who's having troubles getting in, or from the public, or just how our publics can best make comments. You want to speak to that?
So my name is Miranda. Since we do have, I don't normally go into this with as much detail, but since we do have a few new people, I'll give a little more detail. I'll just be assisting with the meeting. So Elizabeth will be running most of it, but if she needs me to unmute people, I can. I will ask, because I did notice this already, if you're not speaking, for you to mute your mic. That way we don't get a bunch of feedback. Especially because when in the recording, it cuts other people out if there's feedback. So we also ask that you announce your name before you speak. That way people that are listening on the phone know who's talking. Oh yeah, and then during the actual presentation, I would ask that you don't use your video because that can sometimes cause a lot of lag time in the presentation. Council member voting will occur by Elizabeth or me, whichever ends up happening there, asking for individual votes, except for maybe in the room there where she can see everybody. And then I think that was, oh, Ray already mentioned that, so never mind. Oh, you can raise your hand if you would like. That's, as far as I know, it's at the top of your screen. There's like a hand and a smiley face. If you don't feel comfortable unmuting and chiming in, then you can use the raise your hand function, and either Elizabeth or I will let you know when it's your turn to speak. And I think that covers it. Ray, you're muted.
Ray, you're muted.
Okay. Elizabeth, could you please just maybe quickly go through the meeting overview and processes? And I think you mentioned you wanted to say something to our outgoing members. So I'll kind of leave it to you from here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ray.
Yep.
Yeah, so Ray did a nice introduction of our new members. I would like to recognize the members that are outgoing. Helen Joyce, Dave Williams, and Ryan Lynch. All three. So Helen has been on the council since 2011. So she's been with us like a decade now. Dave Williams since 2013 and Ryan Lynch since 2017. So we just like to say thank you to all three of them for their service to the council and to the community of Butte, and invite them to attend any of our meetings that they would like to attend. We'd love to still have their involvement. And we have Dave on the phone with us tonight. I don't think that Ryan or Helen were able to join us, but I'd just like to say a big thank you to Dave for all your work and all you've done, and we hope you still stay involved.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I will still stay involved. I still thought we had work to do, but I guess Governor Gianforte didn't think that. So, but I will continue to stay involved. And you know, if questions come up that are relevant to my professional expertise in climate change issues, geomorphology, and geochemistry, I'd certainly be more than happy to get involved and answer any questions people might have. And I certainly appreciate having worked with the folks on the council. Are really a committed group of folks, and thanks for everything.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, with that, I'm just going to do a quick meeting overview. As Ray said, we've got the Butte Hill Reveg programs on the agenda tonight. Their work plan for 2021 is an action item for us. We'll start off with Sue Wall from Herrera giving us a summary of the 2020 monitoring that she did. And then we'll, as Ray said, we've got some pre-recorded videos of the 2020 summary and 2021 work plan from Butte Silver Bow, Montana Tech. As always, we'll do questions from the council first, then go into making a motion on the action item. Then we'll take public input and vote on the action item. And so that's an overview of tonight. And I think with that, we can go ahead and get started with Sue.
Okay, thank you. And I think Miranda was going to put the slides up, and then I'll just ask her to advance them as I go, and if that works. hopefully. I'll just introduce myself quickly. I am with Herrera Environmental Consultants since 2003 and done a lot of different projects having to do mostly with wetlands and revegetation. And I worked with Len on some large planting projects. One of them was Opportunity Ponds and one at Troy Mine. And lately have gotten involved in the Butte Hill project. And it's exciting for me because when I first came to Montana, I lived near Deer Lodge, and that was back in the 80s. So I've seen a lot of the changes and the exciting work that's been done and keeps on going. So I feel very honored to be involved in this. So next slide. Is that working? Oh, thanks. So for this evening, I'll go over a short retrospective of the past efforts and then talk about Herrera's review of the work plans that have been prepared and talk about what we learned at a site visit that we did in August last year, and then present some recommendations for the overall program. Next slide, please. This shows a retrospective since the beginning, just pointing out some of the highlights of the project that began in 2012. And I'm sure that Abby, Julia, and Robert could add a lot more detail, but this is just some of the high points, being that during the first plantings, it was planting pods of larger trees where a lot of soil was removed and then large trees planted. And then also some experiments with sod mats and using grasses and forbs to see if they would disperse into the surrounding grassland. And there was an aspen project that is still going on. And then in 2015, Len was hired to review the restoration plans and develop some recommendations. With his experience on large scale planting projects, he was asked to make these recommendations to see how some of the standard techniques that are used could be incorporated and how some of the efforts could be coordinated. And then also in 2015, Dr. Powell was hired at Montana Tech and brought his skills in ecology and restoration to the projects. And in 2015, Montana Tech had started using had their native plant nursery was going, and they were producing a large number of seedlings in 1 to 5 gallon pots. That was a transition from using the big ball and burlap down to smaller container sizes. And they had collected native seeds from the wild and had quite a large inventory of locally collected seed. And then in 2017, the collaboration between the county and Montana Tech had gotten stronger, and they were working together to choose sites and develop the yearly work plans. And the Montana Tech Nursery was refining their practices and growing plants in a more efficient way and being able to grow more plants in the same amount of space. And then now, after almost 10 years, the collaboration is continuing and being stronger every year. And the Tech Nursery is using all native species and mostly collected locally from local sources, and Dr. Powell's seed mixes are used now rather than the previous seed mixes that were being used previously that were not native. Now it's all native species adapted to the site. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights, as mentioned, the collaboration with Montana Tech and the county, and also with the Natural Resource Damage Program and the Natural Resource Damage Council. And Montana Tech has a monitoring program now to evaluate the success of plantings each year and use those lessons learned. For example, they've gone to only fall plantings now because the spring plantings were not as successful. And the nursery run by Crystal Willage is continuing to improve the quality of plants, and they have reduced the size of the containers even further down to those containers, and they require a lot less effort to plant, and they establish more quickly than the larger nursery stock and can grow a lot more in the same amount of space. And Butte Silverbow monitors soil moisture and uses that to determine when irrigation is needed, because in the past, the frequent irrigation was not really scheduled to depend on what the soil moisture conditions were. It was just on a regular basis, and now it's done when needed, and deeper watering to encourage deep roots and help the plants withstand drought. And tech students are involved in many aspects of the program. It provides a lot of valuable learning for them and an opportunity to get out of the class and get outside and get their hands dirty. Next slide, please. Some more highlights. The nursery is focusing now more on woody species, and that have proven to be successful. And the forb species mainly focusing on the pollinator species and ones that in certain places where the public can see the projects that provide beauty to the site. And Dr. Powell's seed mixes have completely replaced all of the previous non-native seeds that were used. And the species are native and resilient to erosion. And Montana Tech students have contributed some valuable research. There was a GIS model developed by Mark Mariano that helps to decide what species would be appropriate for each site, and they use that as a basis and then further refine it based on the conditions on each site. And there's other projects that have involved metals tolerance studies and developing a software tool for helping to manage the restoration efforts. And next slide, please. The part of Len's work last year was to review the planting plans for two sites, the Anselmo Timber Yard and the Anselmo Mine Yard. He reviewed those and made some recommendations. The problems at Anselmo are the heavy weed infestations and exposed waste and some active gullies. And Butte Silverbow completes the remediation of those under the EPA operations and maintenance. And then the restoration plantings are done through the planting Reveg program in areas where that maintenance has been recently completed. They wanted to include some showy species that can be difficult to establish. So Len had some recommendations for that. Next slide, please. One of the recommendations was for the bitterroot plants was to make sure that the bitterroot plants are planted in just smaller areas that can be closely maintained. If they were put in with the rest of the seeds, they would probably get out competed. So he recommended just designing some specific areas for those. And for the weed issues, he was recommending bringing some soil into the nursery, putting it out in flats and watering it, and identifying if any noxious weed seedlings come up before actually spreading that soil on the site. Next slide, please. And then he reviewed the Anselmo Mine Yard project as well, and they have similar erosion and weed issues. They recommended the rough and loose technique, which you'll see a slide showing that in a couple of slides. But so instead of smoothing out the soil and compacting the soil after tilling, you leave it rough and loose, and you leave any woody debris on the surface, and that creates microsites that catch snow and provide shelter for the young seedlings. And then encourage that on any site that's feasible for the future plantings. Next slide, please. In August, Len and I attended a meeting with representatives from the partner agencies, and I was able to meet some of the people, and we toured some of the plantings and the nursery. Next slide. The first site we went to was the Scrap H site. That was the spot where that rough and loose technique was used, and you can see that it creates a lot of little pockets, and so you can plant the seedlings in those depressions, and that catches snow and really helps with establishment, and all the plants were really doing well on that site. And then they also planted, they made some planting pits in that slope below and planted seedlings there as well. Next slide, please. We visited one of the early pod plantings, and it shows that the plants are doing okay. They're still alive, maybe not thriving as much as they could. And really, as everyone's become aware of now, that was a technique that was early on, but not practical, really too expensive for any kind of large scale plantings. And next slide. The aspen plantings make a really nice visual impression on the hill, and the trees are really thriving. And the cost in labor is quite high still for this, and maintenance will become easier as the trees are slowly being weaned off of the irrigation, and the weed control will continue, probably ongoing on any of the sites. And Len suggested trying some aspen plantings using smaller planting stock as a potential that might be used on some sites. Next slide. The Trevona site was the last one we visited, and the survival is really good on that site. The plants that were planted were the smaller container stock. They were planted at the right time and with really good planting technique. And even on this very exposed, really hot site, they're doing very well. And the next slide. So the recommendations that Len and I came up with for this year would just be to help continue the improvements that have made since the beginning. And it would be beneficial to test for mycorrhizal colonization. The nursery is inoculating the plants, but conditions have to be right for the roots to get colonized. And if phosphorus is readily available, sometimes they don't become colonized. So the suggestion to possibly use the tech laboratory, if available, to do the testing and sampling for colonization, or they can be sent out to a lab to do that. And hardening off the plants is also very important. Most of the plants are hardened off before being planted out, but we would recommend that all of them be hardened off. Now, because the hardening is very critical in terms of getting the plants ready to be exposed to all those conditions out there on the site, it's going to be pretty harsh. So being exposed to the direct sun and wind and cold night temperatures outside before being planted is an important thing. One thing about the conifers is that they will stop growing when the days start to get shorter. And if you use photoperiod lights in the nursery, you can get them to continue growing so that by the fall you have bigger plants. And that's one suggestion for the greenhouse. And then the seed orchard is a really good resource and could be more efficient just by narrowing down the focus onto species that really can't be collected very easily in the wild, or they might have just intermittent seed crops. So those species, it would be really valuable to keep having a seed orchard for that. Next slide, please. Another suggestion would be to think about using professional planting crews or Montana Conservation Corps crews for some of the plantings that could plant large numbers and make sure that they're planted at the correct time and be scheduled ahead of time so that they'd be available and just get a large number of plants in the ground. And student and community members could also participate and would benefit by being trained by those professional crews. And the nursery space could continue to be optimized by narrowing down to really species that have shown the best success, and then adding and having possibly a smaller number of forbs, just those that really add that pollinator value or visual value. And then last recommendation would be, it could be really valuable to have one person as the project manager of this that could assist to just bring everything together in prioritizing sites for the upcoming 2 years, and that would give enough time to really plan for seed collecting and growing in the nursery. And it would be also just being able to plan out the numbers, developing the schedules and responsibilities, and doing the yearly evaluations, and then possibly assisting with community and volunteer outreach and trainings, and then coordinating all the weed control and maintenance needs. So that's kind of a quick update and summary. And I think there'll be a question and answer period at the end. So just appreciate being able to present these, and I'll hand it over to the next person.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate that. Yes, we will get to questions after we see the next presentation. So we'll go on to Butte, Silver Bow, and Montana Tech's presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Abby Peltzma here with.
I'm Robert Powell.
And we're with Butte, Silver Bow and the Montana Tech Native Plant Project, and we're here to present our planting plans for 2021. So here's the outline for our presentation. So we will first go through summary of lessons learned in response to Herrera Environmental's report, 2020 summary of what we did last year, our 2021 planting plans, and our respective program budgets. So first up, lessons learned.
First off, some general suggestions from Herrera that we took from Mr. Len Belek. We definitely are prioritizing Montana native plants. We even are selecting species specifically to different site conditions, for example, contamination. Before we worked with over 150 plant species. Now we, based on Herrera's suggestions, downsized these numbers, and we worked with 30 or 50 plant species that are best adapted to the sites and have best success with survival and growth. We continuously are working with developing seed mixes. Since 2016, we have been incorporating different site conditions and came up with specifically adapted seed mixes that are widely used now on the Hill.
So if you recall, initially, we were using these 40-foot by 40-foot soil pods by 5 foot deep, and we were importing topsoil into those so that we could plant bigger trees. That was not really a sustainable model, and so again, through Mr. Balek's suggestions, we moved towards more soil amendments. And then again, through another reiteration, we moved into using scrapes, rough and loose, and using our previously repaired breeze areas. Again, Dr. Powell really came in and helped facilitate using these as well, so that we could scrape away some of the vegetation and have less competition. Again, initially, our plant size has evolved over time, and so initially we were using ball and burlap, which was again very expensive. And so again, after Mr. Balek's recommendations, we did move to bare rootstock. And then again, through another round of evaluations, we are now using 20 and 40 cubic inch containerized plants. And again, they are currently being grown by Montana Tech. Our irrigation systems have also come a ways. So we began with these irrigation systems installed at the tree pods so that we could actually make sure that these plants would maintain. But again, over time, that is just not viable. So now we have moved to utilizing our water truck, utilizing a moisture monitoring and a Herrera approved watering plan. One of probably the best things that has come out of this project is the partnership that BSB and Montana Tech have come to work under. And so we actually retained Dr. Powell's services to evaluate and verify our remedial maintenance plans on the Butte Reclamation Evaluation System on our breeze sites and make sure that they're consistent with ecological objectives. If you recall, right, Mark Mariano, this was a BNRC small project, created the Mariano model. And so within this, actually, we can take different slopes and aspects, and we're using GIS, and we can hone in on what are the proper species for a site. So that, you know, even if we all were off the face of the earth tomorrow and somebody else had to pick up this project, we could still give them this tool that they could select proper species for the hill. We collaboratively perform community outreach. So in the case if we do have community planting events, Dr. Powell, myself, Julia, we can all reach out to our respective Montana Tech and BSB communities, and we can educate the public. We can rope people into what we're doing, invite them in. We have worked with Butte School District, with the superintendent, with different principals. And then on a day-to-day basis, when we are out planting, people that we get walking by, we are more than happy to talk with them, help educate them about what we're doing. BSB, our initial role, right, is preparing the sites. And so we go in, we have our crews scrape the sites if we need with the big equipment. Also, we monitor moisture so that we can make sure that our watering is sufficient, and performing weed and browse control. Montana Tech has worked really hard to up their plant stock, and so they now generate all of the plant stock as of 2020. They collect all the seeds, they coordinate staff and student installations, which is great. We rely a lot on Dr. Pell and Crystal to ensure that we are properly installing these plants. The other thing too that's great is that we're getting this valid scientific observations, manually weeding sites, which is again another helpful thing so that we can maintenance these sites greatly. And then one of the bigger things that they've moved into is just the overall maintenance of the greenhouse. Now we're going to move into our 2020 summary of work.
And so here we see a figure, and what it actually shows to us, it's based on our monitoring results. And in the beginning, it was a question when to plant different species. And we were trying to fall and spring plantings. And we were originally suggested that spring planting might work better. So based on our monitoring and all these years of experience, now we see that fall planting is really so much more successful than spring plantings, that we are trying to really turn into that, and we are only planting forbs that can survive dry summers really much better and go dormant. But if it were trees and shrubs, they will absolutely fail. So we are planting those in the fall. In this slide, there's one of the technique that Eddie already mentioned. And in the beginning, there was a lot of trial and error to put in a lot of efforts to plant within the caps where there was already an established grass layer. And unfortunately, there was very little survival using this method. So we needed to come up with different ideas. How can we knock back the dominance of these grasses and still not hurting the entity or entirety of the cap? So we created we are creating these smaller or bigger scrapes, which help the plants to establish without the competition of the grasses, and then they can actually outshade the grasses beneath them. So here we see in this graph that in the case of the scraped areas, the survival is significantly larger compared to where we just put in plants directly to the grasses. And you might ask what life forms were better based on our monitoring results on the hill. And we definitely see a bigger success for the shrubs and forbs. Trees many times would require specific conditions, more water, a deeper layer of soil. And so therefore they many times just die. Willows are a little tricky, that you can also see in this graph. We are working with huge numbers of willow cuttings if we get to wetter sites. And so sometimes there are 5,000 to 6,000 cuttings, and out of those, let's say maybe only 1,000 makes it. And then that is really reflecting on the survival rate. But I still feel willow cuttings are a great way of enhancing wet sites. So shrubs, the take-home message is that shrubs are a great life form to work with on the hill. In this slide, we'd like to talk a little bit about Montana Tech's 2020 activities. And here we actually, with our program, we grew 800 trees, 1,600 shrubs, and 2,060 forbs. And with the previous year's plant material, we right now have over 8,000 native plants and forbs, native plants in general, to put out in 2021. During 2020, we collected seeds of 87 native plant species, which is also a great contribution. And then another thing is that we worked with a lot of students in the program. Only 2 of them were paid. Others were work study, or they working for a class. And also 12 volunteers worked with us in the field or in the greenhouses, which is, again, just we can't thank enough for those people who helped the program to run.
Right. So in 2020, we focused our efforts on 3 sites. So the first was the Anselmo Mine Yard. We put approximately 1,000 plants there. The second was the Anselmo Timber Yard, about 2,000 plants in that area. And the last was the Anselmo Dump with 1,500 plants. All have a different variety of aspect and slope. And again, all plants were grown and sourced through the Montana Tech Native Plant Program. So first, the Anselmo Mine Yard. This is one of our BRE sites, again, the Butte Reclamation Evaluation System. So this is a site that historically had a lot of mine waste, and we have come in and capped the site, and we've gone in and done the remedy. And so now we are coming back in with restoration so that we can hopefully make these sites a little more viable. So the evaluation from 2018, what we found was we had a lot of erosion along the south-facing slope, which is common on a lot of our south-facing slopes. There were areas of barren areas, we had copper salts evident, and there was a serious weed infestation. Primarily we had Dalmatian toadflax, spotted knapweed, and cheatgrass. So the corrective measures that were conducted by BSB, so we did implement weed control measures, included mowing and chemical application. Areas that had barren areas, they might have seen soil addition, fertilizing, and interstitial seeding to improve the cover. Any areas that were identified as waste, the waste was excavated out. New fill was brought in, maybe some lime rock, always lime rock actually, and then interstitially seeded. So again, we are proposing that we're enhancing these corrective actions with the restoration enhancement, and so that we can promote the native plant diversity and further augment woody species on the hill. So here's a map. The first thing you're seeing is the Mariano model, right? And so that's showing what species we should be selecting for, so we can have an idea before we go in the field. The second map that you're seeing, this is just what the data our Breeze field crews are collecting in the field. So just to orient you a little, the yellow squares are mine shafts. The green areas are areas of vegetative improvement is needed. So these are erosion, infestation of weeds. The little yellow dot down in the corner is a land slump. And then the red area kind of at the top of one of our circles there is an area of mine waste. The black dots within this one, these are used to mark miscellaneous items. And in the case of these, this is actually mapping some of the previous plantings on the site. So just again to reorient you, we planted on this east bench and then also on the south facing slope. So on the south slope, BSB, we previously performed the described operations and maintenance that I referenced earlier. One of the nice things we did, because we do have erosion on this site, is we did direct the stormwater to the plantings by creating different swales. So hopefully we can capture some of that instead of it going into the storm drains. Several different restoration approaches were employed. So we did utilize scrapes on this site. And then after we are installing the plants, we are making sure to come in with mulch because this is a hot south-facing slope. We want the mulch there so that we can help shield them from sun exposure and also weed infestation and hopefully retain some of that water. So on this site, we installed about 2,500 plants. On the east bench, so if you can kind of take a peek at the picture, right? This is also coming off of a south slope, and there was a nice little bench here. And what we found was that this east bench is actually retaining some of the water that's coming off of that slope. And we noticed that there were wetter species there. So in the case of like rushes, we found there. So we're hopeful that this is a great area, and so that for that reason, we chose the augmentation of more woody plants. So we chose quaking ash, junipers. Again, here we use scrapes. We use smaller scrapes in this area, and we installed about 500 plants. The second area that we focused on was the Anselmo Timberyard slope. So when this area was evaluated in 2018, again, you could see the red areas of exposed waste. There were lots of barren areas. This area has significant accumulation of plant litter that can lead to a lot of erosion issues. And we had, again, serious weed infestation. BSB, our crews went in. They fixed the site with topsoil addition and fertilization. Again, with interstitial seeding, utilizing the 2017 PAL mix. And so we've improved these barren areas, and then we also implemented weed control. If you recall, when we proposed to plant on this area previously, we proposed the eastern part of the site, where previously Dr. Powell had actually those green marks there showing they're representative of some of his previous planting sites. But upon further review, we decided that this site is likely going to see more investigation through the insufficiently reclaimed list. And so because of that, we opted not to plant here with the hopes that maybe in the future we can continue work on this site. So that part was axed, but we did move over to a smaller part on the Anselmo Timberyard slope. This area had been augmented with more soil and had a lot thicker cap there. So we felt like our efforts would be better utilized in this area that was already worked on, and it's not likely to be ripped out. So again, our crews previously performed O&M work here. This was an area that was newly seeded that had been repaired. So we opted to hand pull the weeds. And there were quite a few weeds in this area. So we opted that we wanted our planting to be really successful and viable here. And so we wanted to eliminate as much competition as we could. So we actually spent 2 days with some of our students and hand pulled all of the weeds that we were planting in. So again, Montana Tech provided all the plants, and in this area, we installed about 500 plants. The next site, or the third site, I guess, the Anselmo dump. So again, evaluated in 2018. There's a small area of exposed waste. We have a small area of a small barren area. This site also had significant accumulation of plant litter. And then we had weeds more present on the south-facing slope where you can kind of see that bigger green area. So again, BSB crews went in, fixed with topsoil addition and fertilization. Interstitial seeding was performed, and weed control was also implemented. So here's showing the Mariano model for this site, which helped dictate what plants we wanted to use here. And then with further field investigations, we were able to do more. And then this circle is where we focused our 2020 plantings on. So again, we performed previously described O&M. Scrapes were prepared. On this side, we used larger scrapes over here, and they were prepared by our operators. We again opted to hand pull weeds where we could, just so that, again, we could just, make sure that our tree plantings are sustainable. And we installed 1,500 plants in this area. Now I'll turn it back over to Robert.
Okay, so we also experimented new potential restoration techniques, and you probably remember last year we proposed to put out these restoration packs to different sites on the Butte Hill, and we targeted the Lexington, the Trevona, and the Clark Mill. It's kind of for a demonstration project, but it turned out to be kind of taking up a lot of time and putting in a lot of plants. So what the idea is, you see a couple of pictures. This is from South Africa, from a very dry region where there's a lot of wind, and there was not much success with restoration in general, using seeds and so forth. So what scientists came up with as an approach was to create this restoration packs, they called it, which means they created these fertile islands which were surrounded by cardboard. And in this cardboard collar, they put in different seed mixes and put in different kind of treatments. And down in South Africa, that was a really successful approach. So we thought this could be an approach on our sites where, for example, the Clark Mill that is not reclaimed yet, and we could start something really cool. And so therefore we selected that site, and we also came up with our treatment options here. We use biofertilizer with mycorrhizae, we did mulch, and we also did put in one fringe sage into each collar and added a seed mix to them. And we had of each of these treatments 10 replicates. And with all these combinations, as you see, 3 sites and the 10 replicates, and with the different treatments, we ended up with close to 500 packs in all these sites. And in the next slide, I will talk about our result. So first off, you can see the establishment of these colors at the site, and this is the Trevona on the top left picture. You see our students and volunteers getting ready to put on those colors. Below that figure on the left, it's the Clark Mill. 2 of our students are adding the different treatments to these colors. And on the right, you can see the plants growing after a couple of months in the collars, the fringe sage especially. And then, as I mentioned, there was also a seed mix added. So here's one of our first figure, whether that whole collar idea could be a feasible option in the Butte area. And we tested how big the sage plants grew with or without the collars, and there was a significant difference between the growth of the sages if we compare those 2 options. So definitely it is worth to provide them some kind of a shelter, and it might be just their effect of shading out light and just taking some more moisture on. So definitely the color was a good option. Here on the left figure, you can see the different sites, and that is very striking of a result. So the Clark Mill, the Lexington, and the Trevona, you can see them on the x-axis, and we also just tested the height of the sages. And there were significant differences among these three sites. The Clark Mill, which was an unremediated area, provided us with the smallest growth, and then the Lexington was second, which had I would say a non-native cap. So the cap material came from outside of Butte, and then the Trevona, which had the highest growth, had a local, I would say a native cap material, and that was just amazing that these were reflected in our results. And here, with that, I just would like us to go back to one of our figures that I showed in 2020 at our presentation. So here on the right side, where you can see that on the x-axis, you see that soil origin and the presence of scrape was compared, and then the survival of plants were tested. So the two left bars, the gray and the white, show first of imported material, cap material, and then beside it, it was a native cap material, and they received no scrapes. And the survival rates of the plants were lower. To the right, you see IMP, yes, and NAT, yes, meaning imported soil with scrape, and natural soil, native soil with scrape. They were really close to one another, but here really the scrape was something that showed us a big difference. But what I would like to point back on, that the native soil performed so much better, and that is actually visible from our restoration pack experiment as well. And so here we can see the results of the different treatments, all compared to the control. And I can see that most of the treatment groups were impacting positively the vegetative cover within the collars. And compost perhaps was the least effective, which was surprising, but biofertilizers with or without mycorrhizae performed really well.
So now we'll present our 2021 planting plans. So Butte Silver Bowl and Montana Tech proposed to return to work on 3 large areas in 2021. The first of which is the Anselmo Mine Yard. We propose to install about 1,000 plants there. The second is the Anselmo Dump, propose approximately 1,500 plants. And the third, we'd like to return to Scrap H Road, where we'd like to augment another 1,000 plants. So we're in the range of somewhere between 3,000 to 3,500 plants total. Again, all plants will be grown and sourced through the Montana Tech Native Plant Program, and all sites will be prepared by BSB O&M crews. So the first, if you recall, right, we talked about the issues that went along with the Anselmo Mine Yard. It's the steep south-facing slope that we're working on. There were some barren patches, some mine waste, some serious weed infestation. And so we've gone in and installed so far about 2,500 on this site. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and protocols of working in the field, we really were limited on the number of staff that we had out with us from BSB and Montana Tech, as well as the number of students, and really no volunteers, just so that we could keep things minimal. So with that being said, we feel like we did achieve a great number getting installed last year, but we would like to finish up and augment the last 1,000 plants in the existing scrapes. We also need to mulch those scrapes that are there so that we can shield them from sun exposure and weed infestation. And then again, because it has such a serious problem, we would like to focus a lot on the weed control of this site specifically, and this will be a big area to water. The next one, again, we'd like to continue on the Anselmo dump. If you recall, we were planting more on like the north end of the Anselmo dump, and now in the next map, I'll show you we're going to be more on the south end. So again, some areas of exposed waste were apparent, barren areas, weeds present on the slope. The BSB breeze crews came in and performed the appropriate O&M. And one of the things that we found when we visited this site was that there was a high amount of biocrust and a lot of biodiversity with it as well.
So as we found all these biocrust, we realized that that could be a good tool actually to improve our planting success and kind of just to use that ability of the site to improve the restoration success. And in an ongoing research right now, we exactly are working on this question. So you see a figure here that shows the relationship between the total biocrust cover and the above ground biomass. And in one of our sites at the Mount Hagen area, we found a positive relationship between the crust and the above ground biomass. And from the literature, we also know that the biocrust is actually very good to the native plant survival, and it's not really supporting the exotics or invasive plants as much, which is also to our benefit. And for those of you who need a little bit of a clarification what biocrust means, there's a picture here showing a bunch of mosses, but biocrusts are also compiled of lichens and blue and green algae and so forth. So they're forming this layer on the top of the surface of the soil, and they armor it too. So they're plants and bacteria and so forth.
So if you can see on the map where we're proposing to continue planting, and because of the high amount of biocrust there, we are proposing to utilize unvegetated pockets for the planting. That biocrust is holding some good site stability for us, and so we want to make sure that we preserve that. If we need to do any soil augmentation or seeding, we will, but we would really just like to increase the woody species diversity right here. And again, Montana Tech will be providing all of the plants.
This site, you probably remember in 2018, our team with Butte Silverbow were planting at the Scrap H Road, which used a so-called rough and loose treatment, restoration treatment. And just an explanation, you see the picture on the left top, that little excavator is creating this rough and loose treatment, which is basically compiled of mounds and holes. And these mounds and holes create topographic heterogeneity and armor the hill from erosion, because as water is running down, it just accumulates in these holes, and as the holes and mounds are staggered after one another, there is not a really good pathway for water to go lower down. This treatment was successfully applied in the past couple of years. David Polster, who I actually cite in this slide, was one of the big inventor and applicator for this method. And we also, with this method, we found a really good survival for trees and shrubs and forbs from one year to the other. So therefore, we would like to continue planting on these sites. Also, there was a significant amount of deer damage that hammered some of our plantings or kind of knocked them back where they should be. So we'd like to therefore address the site. And here you can see that we are proposing to add an additional 1,000 trees and shrubs into the top rough and loose configuration, and also going down on this south-facing slope. That is one of the big issue with this site. We're trying to just augment more plants. The PAL 2016 seed mix was applied in this area. I have a fancy tool here, so it's kind of this area, and the seed mix was doing really well, but it needs some structural and species diversity. I also should mention that this is a newly established site. It had erosive issues, and in 2017, I believe, Butte Silverbow addressed these issues, and that's when the seed mix was put down.
Some additional activities that we'll be doing for this year is we would like to address weeding on previously planted sites, specifically not even just using the weed whackers or the mowers, but hand pulling. We also would like to revisit sites to see if they need any additional mulch to help water retention and shade them from the sun. We'll continue with our soil moisture monitoring plan that Herrera approved. And that is also kind of what helps, actually, it's entirely what helps guide if we need additional watering as the season goes on. The last couple of years in August, if it's been a little drier, we have tweaked the watering plan so that we make sure our plants are getting what they need. And we also need to increase the application of deer repellent, specifically like we were talking about Scrap H Road. And some of the other sites need it as well, especially as we're kind of starting to get more of this urban deer population coming down. We'll continue monitoring. Dr. Powell and his team will continue their scientific investigations on the restoration packs, on survival of plants, on the different species. And through this, we'll continue to assess and improve our current restoration approaches. As always, we'll continue our community engagement when we're out in the field, but it's really going to be COVID dependent on whether we get to do a larger event. Again, we are not planning for one, but if things get better, here's hoping. Now we will present our respective program budgets. So first up, I will present Butte Silver Bow's fiscal year 2022 budget. You can see it's broken into a few different categories here. We have personnel, contracted services, marketing and communications, and supplies and materials. Okay, so I'll begin with personnel. These are the number of hours we anticipate we will be committing to the success of this project. Butte Silver Bow has calculated a budget of $33,733, or I apologize, $773 to be covered by the tree program. BSB will match that with $19,831.70. Then moving into contracted services, we anticipate about 75 hours of weed control will be necessary on previously planted sites. And so at $65 an hour, that puts us somewhere around $4,875. We have placed $200 in the marketing and communications category. Again, we acknowledge that we're most likely not going to have a community planting event, but we do think that this is a good placeholder to have. And last year, one of the things that came about is we placed additional signage on planting sites so that people knew that this was a restoration site, who they could contact if they wanted more information. So we do feel like this is an important placeholder. Now going into supplies and materials, one of the biggest changes, right, is that, again, there is no money listed in the vegetation, as that will be covered under Montana Tech and their supply from the greenhouse. We are estimating about 2,000 gallons of water for our tree planting program. And estimating, oh, sorry, I apologize, and 400 gallons of fuel. In fiscal year 2020, NRDP reached out and asked us to cover the landscapes of Montana at the Stewart mine. And so using historical data and what we found in past billing, we multiplied that by the water rate. And so we anticipate and we are earmarking around $5,000 to cover this part of the budget. Moving on, here we have for soils, we have about 8,000. Oh, I apologize. For about general supplies here and a lot of other things, we have about $8,489. This is covering a range of supplies and equipment. So you'll notice on here, right, that we have irrigation system and watering supply materials. So we will be phasing out this. This will actually be the last year of the irrigation systems. Under Mr. Ballick's recommendations, we have continued to draw the irrigation systems down more and more so that the roots of the system, of the tree systems, will go deeper and deeper, so that we are sort of training them right to search for that water deeper. So this will be the last year of this. Again, you can see we have different things for deer deterrent, the procurement of equipment, including up to 100 hours of BSB operated excavator time. You'll notice again, we have a new auger, new drill kit, and bits. This program has a lot of wear and tear, and last year alone, I think we snapped maybe 3 or 4 drill bits in half. So the wear and tear on these is pretty substantial, and we do need to ensure that we have proper equipment so that we don't cause injury to ourselves as well. And then you can see down here at the bottom, right, with this mini excavator, should our excavator not be available, we have reserved some money to rent. And then also there is the air compressor for blowing out irrigation systems. So all told, we present a total budget of $87,631, with $57,863 from the BNRC tree grant and $29,768 contributed by Butte Silverbow.
And here's Montana Tech's Native Plant Program's budget. I also try to break up the different categories as major categories as to my best abilities. So you can see that first off, our budget is from May 1st till June 30th, 2022. This is actually a longer period that we usually apply our budget for, but by the NRDP, we were asked to do that so that our budgeting will be at the same timing as theirs, so it kind of makes things easier and matches with Butte Silverbow's budgeting periods. So it's longer time, and therefore there will be a little bit of bigger numbers reflected in the end. So we also have 3 bigger categories. First off, salaries and wages would be the first one, then fringe and benefits, and then also other. And I try to kind of go into this a little deeper. So salaries and wages. So I am working for this program, I would say, for the entire year. However, only my summer salaries are covered from it. So it's for me, it's 3 months of summer salary budgeted. And you can see also, it's kind of an important thing that I should mention. So up here, you can see that there is May to December, and then also January till June 22. So that's what our research office prepared for us because of how tech kind of operates and needs to see these numbers. But in the end, we would need to see those total numbers. So turning back to the salaries and wages, so the total amount on the restoration ecologist for those summer salaries, and it covers not just 2021 summer, but also a part of 2022 summer, which would be $35,151. And because, as I mentioned, during the year, I'm also operating and directing the project, there will be a cost share of 235 hours, which is kind of me managing the program during the year. Krista Weilich, our greenhouse manager, so she is paid from this grant through the entire time. So you can see her budget in the end can be seen here, 43,258. And then this year we didn't put in any money for grad students. We might have one later on, but right now we just have a little bit of savings on that. But we put in for 2 undergraduate students here, and we would like to work with them during the semesters and in the summers. The students can work 40 hours during the summer and 15 hours during the academic year. And so the budget for that can be seen here. And also, everything comes with fringes and benefits. They are summed out here. As the other category, which you can see here, there is supplies and materials. You can see here, travel will be the next category. And that's it. So for supplies, we have for the entire period, $10,000, and for travel, which actually just using the Montana Tech vehicle and going out to the sites and monitoring for those entire, I think it's 14 months, that would be, we're budgeting $2,000. And so you can see in the end, we have $192,852 that we are asking from the NRD, and we have $25,720 as cost share. You can also see numbers here as the IDC. This is how the university systems operate. There is overhead, but I think that is quite easy to understand. So if we think about what are these overheads spent on, so you can see $38,570. The Montana Tech greenhouse, and I should say greenhouses are operated right now completely out of Montana Tech's budget, and they are not built into the NRDP asked money. So that's kind of a big chunk, heating and cooling those greenhouses throughout the entire year. And we have other facilities. We have an entire building where we have our pots and little lab operated. And also just kind of that Montana Tech houses us. It's kind of easy to kind of understand where this number kind of is going. And with that, if you have questions in the live session, I think both Abby and I will be happy to answer, and hope you'll be able to answer your questions on that. But I think with that, we both thank you for your attentions, and we are ready for questions.
I think, Ray, will you kind of just announce that there will be a little modification?
Yeah. Let me check. Elizabeth, we noticed that you were kicked off the presentation for a bit. Did you miss any slides that you're aware of? Did you see the budget slides by both parties?
Ray, we saw a Montana Tech's budget, but we weren't able to see Butte Silver Bow's. Is there any way we could take a look at that one more time?
Yeah, sure. Miranda, can you go back to that and project it, or?
Enlarge it a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, it's a big.
Or I can share a screen as well. Thank you.
We saw that.
There you go. Oh, that's much better. Could we just talk through it just quickly for us?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, Abby, go ahead, please.
Get back to it. Okay, so if you guys can see that. Thank you, Miranda. We are presenting, this is Butte Silver Bow's fiscal year 2022 budget. And so with this, you'll notice that we have our budget broken out into 4 categories. And so we have personnel, contracted services, marketing and communications, and supplies and materials. And so let's start with personnel first. You'll notice those hours there, right? So 10, 20, 80 on down. Those are the number of hours that we anticipate we will be committing to the success of this project. And so with that, we have calculated a budget of $33,773 for personnel to be from the tree project, to be covered by the tree project, excuse me. And Butte Silverbow will match that with $19,831. Then moving into contracted services, we looked at what historically we have been doing on the sites, and we anticipate about 75 hours of weed control on previously planted sites at a rate of $65. And so that puts us right around that $4,875. We have placed $200 in the marketing and communications placeholder. We realized that we're not holding a community event this year, but we felt like it was important to keep this placeholder here. One of the things that we started doing last year was on a few of our sites, like the Trevona, we actually put up signage that had just quick little description about what was going on at the site, that it was a restoration project funded by NRD, BSB, and Montana Tech worked on it, and who they could contact for more information if they were curious about it or wanted to volunteer. So we felt like leaving the $200 there was adequate, especially if we want to add more signs, and in likelihood we will. If we jump down to supplies and materials, you'll notice vegetation, right? There's nothing there, as all of the plants will be coming from Montana Tech. Watering, if we jump down to that, we have estimated about 200,000 gallons of water. And then under that a little ways that I accidentally crossed out, I apologize, that says 400 gallons for fuel. So that's what we anticipate for the Butte Hill Tree project. In fiscal year 2020, NRDP reached out to us and asked us to cover the landscapes of Montana planting at the Stewart, the aspens. And so using historical data, we went back and we looked and we multiplied this 1.2 million by the water rate, and we are earmarking $5,000 to cover that. Moving on through soils, we haven't really imported many soils. We've placed that holder there, but don't anticipate that. Mulch, we do anticipate getting mulch again so that we can go back through the sites like we talked about. And then if you see moving into general supplies, we have reserved about $8,489 there for a range of supplies and equipment. So you'll see that I have, the first off, I have irrigation and watering supply systems, or watering system supplies, I apologize. We are moving away from the irrigation systems per Herrera and Mr. Ballack's recommendations, and this will actually be the last year of those systems. We have been weaning them off strategically under his guidance. And so again, we felt like one more year of drawing them down just so that we can ensure that those roots are going deeper and deeper so that we have a more viable population would be worth it. And we didn't exactly have the wettest winter, so we're just trying to take care of them, that's all. So then next we have deer deterrent, which will be increasing the application of the deer deterrent as we have more urban deer populations moving down through the valley. We think that's really important to keep up on. We also have placed about 100 hours of our BSB operated excavator there. And then under that, we have auger, fuel, drill kits, bits, knee pads, work gloves. This equipment is, Robert and I can speak to this. This is really critical. Last year, I think we snapped, in the original presentation, I said the drill bits. we actually snapped the drills themselves, like off the handles, because we were using so many and so much wear and tear. And so we are wanting to replace those. And we do feel it is very important to have correct, proper equipment so that we are not injuring ourselves. Then beyond that, we have the mini excavator. We have a little bit there. So should our excavator through BSB not be available, we have reserved some money there. We don't anticipate that. And then the air compressor, again, to blow out the irrigation systems at the end of the season. So all told, Butte Silver Bow presents a total program budget of $87,631 with $57,863 from the BNRC tree program and $29,768 to be matched by Butte Silver Bow.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much for going through that again with us, Abby. We totally missed the part.
Okay. Sorry for the rest of you had to sit through it again.
Yeah, me too. All right. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and open it up to council questions first. And maybe we'll do any questions in this room, and then anybody online, if you raise your hand, then we'll get to you in order of your hand raised.
So Elizabeth, this is Ray, if I may interject.
Sure.
I know Robert has an interest in offering some information recently discovered about their budget. So he just wanted to mention that in addition.
Sounds good. Go ahead, Robert.
And for that, I would need to share screen. So can I do that? Can I have that done? I don't know, Miranda, can you give me that?
Yeah, just 1 second, Robert. I'll get you that permission.
Okay.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen now. I will.
Okay, I think I am. Can you see now that presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just putting it to a present. Oh, of course. Anyways, I bet you can see that, because if I'm presenting, it just jumps onto another screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so just in the last day, it was discovered by Doc Martin that our IDC values were charged on a 25% rate instead of basically previously agreed 20%. However, our current agreement was not under these conditions, but we kind of made some additional work, and then the IDC rates were decreased to 20%. So that means almost a $10,000 savings, which you can see down here. I'm trying to just 1 sec. Anyways, the problem is that here can you see my mouse too, hovering around?
Yes.
Okay. So we were at 190. We can actually go up to the previous slide and we can see it then. 190, almost $193,000, and with the lower IDCs, we are down at closer to 185,000. And these IDC rates are really a result of a negotiation between NRDP, the state in a way, and Montana Tech. The federal rates, they're charged at Montana Tech, they are, I think, over 40% for IDCs as these university systems. So I believe that is really good news, savings on the budget. And that was the augmentation that I wanted to say, because that was discovered and modified after we did our recording. So that's the reason why this came out so oddly. And because now I have the share screen option, I just make roam around and will show you something else, because I realized I didn't do that. So Sue actually suggested to have grow lights for our plants, and I just took this picture yesterday, and our little pine trees are already growing. They're getting that additional lighting that Len suggested previously. So I'm just showing that is happening, and I'm really happy that I was in the greenhouse yesterday with Crystal, and we kind of went through this. And about our microbial mutualist, here is what's happening with our plants. So here are some of the pines. They are ectomycorrhizal, and you can kind of visually see the mycorrhizal relationship. And this is some of the slides that one of our students nowadays researching on whether these microbial mutualism is established or not. So we are doing that. So I'm just kind of happy to report that these are current results. So thank you. And I jump out of screen sharing. So Miranda,
hey,
you're
Robert,
welcome to take
Robert,
away. Yes.
Before you jump out, this is John Sesso.
Yes.
Going back to your budget, is there a mistake on your benefits? In the narrative, you say 46%, but in the math, you have 35.
I'm not sure. It's probably because of its different time frame. But I have actually Joanne Lee, the director of our research office, and probably she could answer that question. So Joanne, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Robert. This is Joanne John. Robert's benefit rate as a faculty member is actually the 35%.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of a
was at one
mistake.
time the 46% before he became full faculty, but his contract changed within the last year, and so he's now at the lower rate.
Perfect. We'll just correct the narrative
Yes.
there in that first column. Thank you.
Thank you for noticing that. So it's not corrected here in this column. Yes.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and open it up to questions from the council. And Sister Mary, not yet. Do you want to go first?
I want to talk to you guys. Hello, this is Emmett Reardon. Looks like a lot of good work has been done. You folks are doing a good job. Could you tell the council what protocols Butte Silver Bow do you have in place to make sure that the restoration dollars aren't being spent or used for remediation, which isn't, we're not responsible for remediation. So I'm not sure who that question is to, but if you could tell us that, I'd appreciate it.
This is Julia Crane. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you here, Julia.
Okay, Butte Silver Bow does not use any of the NRDP or BNRC granted dollars for any of our O&M obligations on the Butte Hill. Those funds are completely covered by the Atlantic Richfield allocation agreement that provides financing to our reclamation department. And so, as Abby and Robert described in their presentation, when we complete operations and maintenance on an identified deficiency in the field, that work is completed by our operators and our laborers that are employed by the Superfund department. Often that work happens in the fall, a full year before the NRDP restoration plantings would be implemented. We keep all of our budget tracking clear to make it clear that we are not using any of our operator or labor time to complete any of any of our NRDP funded partners. So we have one watering person that we hire and pay from those funds to make sure that they are not working on any of the operations and maintenance that we're required under EPA approval. As you will note in the progress reports that we supply to the Natural Resource Damage Program on a quarterly basis, We clearly document the hours that we are committing as staff or we are committing as our laborers and operators to fulfilling the obligations of the program requirements as a match to the implementation of the restoration dollars. So for instance, if we have 400 hours that our watering guy committed, we may have had 60 hours that was committed by our operator. That is clearly listed and delineated in separate columns to communicate that. We also buy our operations supplies and materials specifically from an NRDP budget rather than from our Superfund budget, so that it is clearly distinct and separate from any activity that has to do with remedy, to make sure that those resources are being used only on restoration-oriented projects.
All right, very good. Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome, Emmett. Thank you.
Sister Mary Jo?
Sister Mary Jo with a question. And, you know, I first of all, I want to compliment Brother Pal and all that he's done for you, because it's a marvelous work that he's completed and done. And we're very proud of what we have thus far. I realize we need a whole lot more, but that will come. The Anselmo mine yard, as I understand it, was done under remediation. And I may be wrong on that. Maybe Julie, could you tell me? Was that originally done under remediation?
Sister Mary Jo, yes. The Anselmo Mine Yard and the breeze sites, or the source areas that are, we call breeze sites, around the perimeter of the Anselmo Mine Yard were initially reclaimed in the late 90s and early 2000s on through the 2000s under remediation. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And now we're revisiting them, and we're revisiting under restoration. So are more funds being put into Butte Silver Bow's funding by ARCO, because it's now becoming restoration, when it was originally remediation didn't work or it didn't take. So, but I mean, and obviously there are reasons why.
So, sorry to interrupt you. Keep going. I apologize.
The question now is, it's being moved into restoration, so there is a difference in how that's funded. So how many in the project?
How many are, I didn't hear that last part.
How is the remediation and restoration delineated in the project as it goes forward now that it's going back to restoration instead of remediation?
Okay, as Abby presented in her presentation in 2018, there were findings during the Butte Reclamation Evaluation System evaluation. So we have a third-party contractor that goes to these sites and they observe these sites to identify areas where there are deficiencies. Deficiencies in the sites include things like sparse vegetation, erosion, rilling or gullies that form. We also identify things such as barren areas or areas of exposed waste. Those types of things happen all across the Butte Hill, and they are just an outcome of maintaining a reclaimed facility. It is the reason why the Butte Reclamation Evaluation System exists and why we use that system to drive the operations and maintenance that we complete as a program. So Eric Hassler and Brandon Warner are those who lead the operations and maintenance program at Butte Silver Bow. They are required by the EPA and the DEQ to go out and complete corrective actions on those sites. So we'll use barren areas, for example. Often when a barren area is identified, the solution for that is to scour the area and then apply soil and then go back and then reseed it. All of that work is funded by Atlantic Richfield through our allocation agreement. That is the normal operations and maintenance that we are required to commit to a site to maintain its integrity and ensure that we are keeping the waste under vegetation. What we have opted to do is after Butte Silver Bow completes that O&M work, we take advantage of that work and then plant the restoration plantings directly into those sites. So as you see areas where the work has been completed, we have scraped areas, for example, where we have pulled some of the vegetation back, but we also needed to get rid of maybe clusters of weeds. We take advantage of those voids that are created through the O&M project or process and then use them as areas where we can do restoration enhancements. All of the O&M work is paid for by Atlantic Richfield dollars. The work that we commit to this, whether it be for our watering person or the supplies and materials required to install those plants, are paid for from the NRDP budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Bill Callahan. I'd like to commend the work that's being done with the re-veg. Things are looking up as far as I'm concerned. I've got a couple of technical questions, and I don't know whether to direct these to Robert or direct them to Abby. Either one of you could answer these. I'm wondering if you've looked into biological controls instead of using chemical applications to deal with the weed problem that we have. And if you've compared costs in that particular case.
I can talk to you just one part of it, whether we are trying to establish biological control or not. So what I can tell you that one of our former students, Jared Trilling, works at the biological Rocky Mountain Research Station, and he is specifically working on Dalmatian toadflax biocontrol. And they were out last year to talk with us about possible kind of establishing sites to try out or apply the biocontrol on, for example, on that one weed. I can't speak to whether we compare those prices. It's usually for chemical control and biological. The chemical is usually Butte Silverbow's under Butte Silverbow's task. So probably maybe Abby or Eric or somebody else could also say something to that.
Okay, Robert, if I could continue on, I've been using biological controls, albeit on 20 acres for the knapweed infestation I have. And I'm using the root weevils and the flower weevils, and I've been doing this for about 5 years. And I've noticed probably somewhere between a 40 and to 60% reduction in the problems that I'm having with the knapweed. Consequently, what I'm seeing is that for an initial investment on that 20 acres, I spent about $700 to establish the root weevils and the flower weevils, and they are still present, and I'm going out to check to see as things warm up and come back. And I'm just wondering, looking at the budget that, that Butte Silverbow has spent $4,875 or projecting to spend this year on the chemical application, if it might not be beneficial to look into the biological controls via mostly insects is what I've been looking at, to see if that might not in the long run establish an insect population that's specific. And the biological controls that I'm using now are only specific to the spotted knapweed or the knapweed that's there. And I'm just wondering if that might not be something to take into consideration. So I'm just throwing that out there to see if maybe you guys might consider taking a look at that. So I have one more question, and maybe you could address this. I'm wondering if you're diverting stormwater into your planting areas, if you're bringing metals into those planting areas, and if you have taken any steps to look to see if that stormwater that may be running off the Butte Hill is adding any metals into what you've, what you're trying to establish. I'm just curious about that.
Would you like somebody from Butte Silverwest answer that?
Or if you can answer it, that's fine. But if Abby can answer that, that would work too. I'm just curious as if metals are getting transported in the stormwater that you're diverting is affecting what we're doing there.
Bill, this is Julia. We had I'll just take that question. I would say that what we are trying to do is eliminate the potential for those waters that are already flowing. Typically, they would only be containing metals if they were interacting with wastes that are sub-cap. And because they are not doing that, I would I would venture to say that they are not spreading contamination, but the objective would be that the native plants that are planted across the site are actually slowing the transmission of those waters that may potentially contain contaminants and making sure that they are not eroding off of the site and into the stormwater system and thus to Silverbow Creek, which means that the plantings are actually achieving their desired effect, which is to mitigate stormwater erosion into the stormwater system and to the creek.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Julia.
You're welcome, Bill. Thanks.
All right, it looks like Courtney Young has his hand up. Courtney, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, please. I am not a biologist. I think everybody knows that. Where's all the metallurgy anyways? No, I'm just teasing. Robert, maybe you might be the best to answer this because you showed a slide of your best fit data. I forget what it was that was being fit, but the R squared value on that was really low.
Yeah, I know was not, but basically the trend was significant. So we tested, of course, the R square values, but also tested whether the relationship is significant. And I know it would be nicer if there was a better significancy out there. And that was, as I said, out in the Mount Hagen area. And there is other research. So I just wanted to show that there is I wouldn't say it's giant, so it's not close to 1 for sure. It's closer to like 0.2 than to 1. But the relationship is definitely, in that long term, a significant relationship.
Is that fairly common with plant life like you've been looking at, or?
Yes, and I would say that after a while, the benefits from the biocrust, the mosses and everything will go away because the plants shade them out. So in a way, it's kind of a system where, they compete with each other. They provide benefit for a while for plants and keeping moisture and also fixed nitrogen. But after, the plants who surround this biocrust, they're also will kill in the long term the biocrust. But then we are not worrying because that's a process, that's a natural process. So those are the first in the successional row, and then come grasses and forbs, and then take over, and then will be shrubs and trees, let's say, in the end. So those are really important, and they're holding soil, and there is a significantly positive relationship, I would say, between the biomass, like grasses and forbs, and the biocrust. That was the message with that. And if we use them, if we put native plants in between them, that could provide us better survival and growth in the short term.
All right, and then my last question is just a curiosity question. The state of Montana is experiencing a lot of fire this last couple of decades, and how does this? I mean, obviously the plants can regrow and what have you, but in the immediate aftermath of a fire, does it stop erosion? Are the roots still stable enough to keep things secure?
I try to answer that too. So out here, the fires on our sites usually come from firework. And, after July 4th, we have some sites that are burned down. And we used those sites to our benefits because many times, we try those scrapes and everything to knock back the reclamation grasses that help to stabilize quickly the cap. But after, we would like to diversify them. And if the fire actually knocks those grasses back, that is kind of to our benefits. And usually those perennial grasses, they're not killed by the grasses. They need to be really hot fires. Oh, sorry, by those fires. They need to be really hot fires to kill the grasses. And their root systems are holding the soil.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So thank you, Robert. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the council? All right, I'm going to ask a couple quick ones and then we'll go to the motion. So I was wondering, I know we didn't do the community event that we've done in the past last year because of the pandemic. I wondered if we had plans on doing anything of that sort going forward.
Hi, Elizabeth. This is Abby. We, of course, would love to do that because it's getting, 100, 200 people out on the site and they're learning about those sites. At this time, we are not planning for a community event this spring or this coming fall, but in the future, we do anticipate that to pick back up. They have been successful.
I also just would like to just augment that. So with the Montana Tech students, we last year they were volunteering in a way on the Montana Tech, what was it, the Make a Difference Day. And we had like 100 students picking up trash and helping a little bit planting. But actually that was an unfortunate event because then was that movie at the movie, what was it, production at that Anselmo site, and it was just an unfortunate coincidence that they were in the same site. But we might be able to recruit quite a good number of Montana Tech students for a couple of hours if we cannot get the community together because of still the COVID. And I hope we just go into a better direction and tech students can remain on campus in the long term.
That's great. Thanks, guys. I guess I would just reiterate from the council that we do think those community events are really important. I know you guys probably do too, but it just gets people out, even though I know, some of the planting is a little bit rough and we have to go back and fix it afterwards, but just seeing the area families and people involved, I think it really gives them a reason to buy into a lot of the restoration work that's going on and protect it and feel like it's theirs. So I just 2 cents on that. Then my other question was, I thought that Robert, the work you were doing with the restoration packs or the collared restoration packs, are you planning on doing more of that anywhere in the restoration work for this year or in the future?
That is something that we can always, we have still, Crystal is on the call, maybe she can tell you still how many extra collars we provided for the experiment. So we have probably a couple of more hundred. So we for sure can put some out, and if not for all of the scrapes, at least we can. That's a really good idea. I haven't even thought about that, but that's kind of just a decision. We bring out those collars, and just the presence of collars will improve the survival rates and the growth of the plants in the first season already. And if we kind of just hint it a little bit with biofertilizer or something, will be even better. So I feel like we definitely should do that, and I would say we adopt that right away. Crystal is on the call, so we definitely need to remember kind of figuring a good setup out. And the good thing about it, they look after the first season because all of the snow and the rain makes them sad looking, but they're all cardboard and they have like a metal little clamp on it. So even in the next couple of years, everything will be decomposed. It will be not just like a piece of plastic hanging around the side. In the beginning, I wouldn't say it's beautiful, but probably we can also dismantle them after the first year or two if they're still there.
Great. Yeah, I was just thinking on that south face of the Anselmo, that might be a great place to just add some shelter and maybe a little shade for the
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Great. This is Abby again. We have been trying it, and this is brilliance of Crystal. This is not me, Crystal and Robert. We have been, as we've been planting on like the Trevona and the Anselmo in any of our spots, anytime we find rocks or anything, we have been strategically placing them so that we can try, and then also building up some like little berms kind of so that we can try for water retention and some kind of shading.
Great.
And Elizabeth, this is Eric, and I'd just like to add that when we were doing the scrapes, we were purposely doing them in a fashion that we're pulling the overburden, if you will, to the down gradient side to also help retain water within the scrapes and benefit the plantings going forward.
Perfect, great. All right, thanks, you guys. All right, one more time, any questions from the council? Seeing none, I think Ray has prepared a potential motion for us. Ray, do you have that? Can you display that?
Hi, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think Miranda's going to put it up for us here. I could, there it is.
All right, I'm just going to read it and see if this works for the council. A motion to recommend the Montana Tech and Butte Silver Bow native plant projects proceed as proposed, contingent upon additional review by NRDP staff. Should there be changes to the work plans resulting in additional expenditures over $10,000, we request additional review of the work plan at the next BNRC meeting. So that's the proposed motion. Do I have any comments, questions, or changes to the motion?
Elizabeth, Madam Chair?
Yep, go ahead, John.
John Sesso, what is the necessity and scope of the contingency of additional review by NRD?
Ray, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Liz. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I appreciate that. So currently the presented work plan, it's consistent with what we heard tonight. It's consistent with the restoration plan, its amendments. The budgets appear to be appropriate and cost effective. And I have high confidence in our cooperators' capacity to do the work. But we don't have a actually written work plan. And until other staff have had an opportunity to review that written work plan, we can't authorize the expenditure of those funds. So, I don't know, Doug, if anybody else has anything to add to that, but that's in brief. I just need to see written materials. So.
All right.
Madam Chair, my follow-up is: Are we going to have to approve it again after Ray reviews written materials? Does he have the authority then to deny the recommendation or circumvent it?
As written in the motion, and please tell me if I'm not saying this correctly or evaluating this correctly, but it looks like if we were to approve the work plans tonight, that there would have to be additional expenditures over $10,000 for it to come back for a re-review. Then it would come back for a re-review by the council. Is that correct? Is that what we're looking at, Ray?
Yeah, that's correct, Elizabeth. So, yeah, if the costs were to exceed what we've currently reviewed.
So, John, do you have any more questions or comments on that?
I guess not.
So Elizabeth, this is Doug. John, I can expound on that a little bit. So John, we just got these the budgets and the presentation that outlines what's there this week, and so we have not had a much time to go over it, and that's all we are asking for is just make sure that, since we are accountable for this, we have the appropriate time to review it. And do we expect a large change? No, we do not. It's very similar to last year's budget, but we just want to make sure that it is correct. So that's where we're asking for this time.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the motion?
Yeah, this is Courtney. I'm just questioning, the procedure here. I don't understand the second part of that. It's almost like it's a window for the people to spend $9,999 without question. And I presume that that's not the case, and that wouldn't be the case because I know these people, they're honest folks. It just seems weird to me to do that.
Ray or Doug, would you like to jump on that one?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say, Courtney, this is Doug Martin. This was placed there just as a placeholder, as some kind of guidance of if it was something, if we came up with a budget adjustment that, amounted to a $2,000 budget that was insignificant or something like that. And our discussions with amongst ourselves and with Elizabeth, who came up with this, upper limit of $10,000. If it was over that, then that would be something that we would want to take back to the council.
So the idea behind it, Courtney, was just that if there are small little, changes in the budget because of, a mathematical error or whatever, that it wouldn't have to come back to the council. But if as a council, if we think that $10,000 is too much, I mean, we could make a proposal, or we could look at lowering that number. And I guess I'm looking for discussion on that point.
I'm new to this, obviously, so I just ask the questions so I can learn, and I'm listening intently to all these answers too. So I'm in the learning mode, so I'm going to ask questions like crazy.
Perfect. We like lots of questions. Does anybody have a problem with that $10,000 limit? Questions on it? All right, seeing none, would someone like to make this motion?
I'll move the motion. John Cecil.
Thanks, John. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
So we have Bill Callahan with a second. Given that, we're going to open up the discussion to the public for any additional questions. Is there anyone else that has additional questions? You can raise your chat hand, or if you're on the phone, just jump in. Any questions in the room? Okay. All right, seeing no questions, we'll go ahead for a vote, and I'm gonna just call on people individually to make sure that we get everybody's vote recorded correctly. So Emmett, I'll start with you.
4.
Sister Mary Jo is a 4.
4.
Bill is a 4. Elizabeth is a 4. John Cecil?
4.
Courtney Young?
4.
Suzanne? Are you still on? We'll go to Haley.
I think Suzanne had to drop off. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you. Haley? Haley Beaudry? Did we lose him too? All right, so I'm just quickly, that gives us six votes for, which is a majority and unanimous. Any opposed or anybody I missed? I think we got everyone.
I think so.
All right, the vote carries unanimously with 6-4. All right. With that, we will. We were looking at setting up the next meeting. We're looking at a May meeting to go over the rest of the BNRC projects that are out there. We just are looking for it. It'll be more of an informational meeting where the NRDP gives us an update on all of the other additional projects that are funded by the BAO fund. And we are looking for a May meeting. Ray or Doug, did you guys have a proposal on a date for that?
I actually don't, Elizabeth, but I guess I don't know. How's mid-May sound to people? It's a fair amount of material for us to pull together, but I know summer's coming up. I'm open to suggestions. So, but around the 15th sounds like it would. I think it'd work for the program. For me, I'd have to check with the rest of staff, of course.
All right. So if
so I guess I could look at my calendar, Elizabeth, to see a better date. If we want to keep to Thursdays, is that a habit that we want to keep in?
Yes, that's the date we've picked within the council that seems to work for everyone. So maybe the 13th of May.
Yeah, that would be something that I'm happy to route through staff. The 13th or the 20th, if those dates would work for council and yourself.
All right, that sounds good. If you brought that out there, and then we'll get that one set up. And with that, I think we are ready to.
Could I just ask also a question here, Elizabeth?
You bet. Go ahead, John.
With respect to the updates for next time, would it be possible to, provide, especially in light of the 3 new members, to not only describe the projects that are being funded, as you say, through the Butte Area 1 account, but could we just widen the scope a little bit and have updates on the projects that are underway or in some phase of all the projects that are in the Butte area? I know some are being funded with the BAO dollars, but there are some others that are being funded with the aquatic dollars under the other pots of money, even projects that are being funded with the groundwater dollars, but they're all in the Butte area. And I think as BNRC members, it would be great to learn more about the projects that are being funded through the BAO fund, but also in the context of the other projects in the Butte area that are being funded with other BNR or NRD dollars. So I would just, and there's not that many. I mean, I would just ask that the scope of the presentations include those, even if it takes 2 meetings. But I just think it's very important that the BNRC board really knows about and can synthesize these projects that are underway in the Butte area that are being funded with other dollars in the NRD program, Madam Chair.
That's a great suggestion, John. Doug and Ray, is that possible to get those pulled together for mid-May?
This is Doug, Elizabeth. Yes, we can do that. We had previously provided some information to two others, including John. So a lot of that information is already started in template, and we can do that. We will try to get that out to the council prior to the meeting, so you'll have it to flip through, and we'll run through that. So yes, we will work on that.
Great, thanks, Doug. Eric Hassler, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but on behalf of Butte Silver Bow, I'd like to apologize to the council for not being prepared for tonight to provide an update or any report in regards to the Basin Creek project. So that's it.
We appreciate that, Eric. We saw that Pat was on vacation and totally understand. He's promised to get us on the next meeting, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? How about a motion to adjourn?
So I'll make that motion.
We got a motion from Sister Mary Jo and a second from Mehmet. So I think we're adjourned. Thanks everyone for participating tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.